Hi, welcome to the Business Spotlight Series. My name is Karen Barnes. I'm an accountability coach with Serendipity Action Coach of Central North Carolina. And I have Scott Wollaston, who is the executive director of a really fast-growing sports organization called NC Fusion. And they've got so many exciting things going on between developing fields and programs and buildings. You're going to want to stay tuned and see all the things that they have going on and how he's navigating his business. So he's going to talk with us about what it's like to grow a fast-growing organization, what's happening in sports, and share some of the lessons that he's learned since he got involved with the organization more than 10 or 12, 15 years ago now? Is that right?
Almost 20.
Holy cow, that's gone fast. Well, listen, a little bit of housekeeping. If you're new to the channel, you've got to hit all the buttons. Hit like, hit subscribe, share this with the people that you think will find a lot of value in this conversation. And let's jump right in. So, Scott, welcome to the program today.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm stoked. As I just mentioned to you before I hit the record button, you're heavily involved in soccer. Soccer was a really important part of learning about team sports for me as I was growing up. I played for 3 or 4 years with the predecessor organization to NC Fusion. And, team sports has so many valuable lessons to learn. I can't wait to hear how you translated some of those lessons into building and growing your business.
Yeah, look forward to sharing that.
Awesome. Well, just start off by telling us, what's NC Fusion all about? If we
Mhm.
were to, what's your story? What's the overview? What are you guys focused on?
So we're a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. We officially have been in existence since March of 2018, but as you said earlier, we are the really the new brand, if you will, of several entities coming together that have a long history in both the Winston-Salem and Greensboro communities. Previously in Winston, we were known as Twin City Youth Soccer Association and then Twin City Sports. And then in Greensboro United Soccer Association, which was actually a merger of Greensboro Youth Soccer and Guilford United Soccer. So there's a long history there, probably dates back to the 70s. So I feel like, I've just been really fortunate to be a part of an organization that is, ultimately we were trying to unite the triad through sport. That was kind of our motto or tagline, which was important. I think as those know that are in this region, as much as people talk about there being collaboration between the different communities of
Yes.
Winston and Greensboro and High Point, it's not being from here, it's challenging because you say the triad means three. I just mentioned those three places, but almost half of the population of the triad lives outside of those three cities. So I think it's been quite an achievement in and of itself, just bringing people together from the Greensboro and Winston-Salem community and now High Point and all of the surrounding areas. But I think that the reason that's happened is because we're a very mission driven organization.
Mm-hmm.
Our mission is to create intentional experiences through sport to positively impact people for life. And I
What
think
a
that,
beautiful
um,
mission.
well, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, the fact is, you mentioned earlier about the things that you get out of sport. Um, I feel very thankful to be doing something that is my passion, that is
Mm-hmm.
mission driven. And, ultimately, it really is having a tremendous impact on our communities. And I would say that really in two ways. One that I would tell you just personally I care more about than the other, but the other is vitally important and allows us to make the first one happen. So the first one is just that impact this sport can have on individuals. And
Mm-hmm.
for a long time, I thought this is all about the kids and the players. And a lot of people will use the tagline, it's about the players, it's about the children. And for a long time, I really did believe that. And I'm not downplaying that because it certainly is. But I actually now have a stronger conviction that it's actually just as much, if not more, about the adults that are involved, whether we're talking about parents and families or we're talking about coaches, because
Mm-hmm.
as parents, we don't get much feedback. And I mean that I
Constructive
pause
feedback, right?
I
Yeah,
pause I
yeah.
pause there for a second, because like our best friends don't tell us how good we're doing as parents, because they just don't
Yeah,
want to get into it with us, right?
sure.
We get some feedback at work in some way, shape, or form, but like our kids sort of become a little litmus test of like how we are as parents.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's a real long-term play, isn't it? Right?
The longest.
The longest for sure. And so I just think that in youth sports, we have an opportunity to really help families and help parents really navigate a sports journey for their child. And while they're doing that, I find that we learn more about ourselves as adults than even the kids do about themselves. And that has become more and more of what I would say I spend my time doing.
Hmm.
And so that's the excuse me, that's the first part, just in terms of like the impact on community is through the sport itself with the stakeholders that are involved. The other side of it is, you mentioned about facilities and things like that. The economic impact of youth sports is massive. We've had two events in the last 3 weekends that have that the Visitors Bureau has said that we're nearly $15 million in economic impact on the local communities. That's people
Wow.
traveling in, staying in hotels, spending money in our gas stations and restaurants, and all of
Yeah.
those different things. And that doesn't matter. One thing about the triad, it doesn't really matter whether it's happening in Greensboro or Winston-Salem or Asheboro, or everyone feels the impact of that bleed, if you will, of all over the place. And so I've been really I'm not as I'm not as hyped up on that, as passionate about that, but I'm fortunate I've got people that are on my staff that are very passionate about that and do an incredible job with creating great events. And I feel like for our community, that is the front door. Everybody that comes here, I don't care who you are, if you ever travel somewhere for an event of some kind of conference, a tournament, whatever it is, I feel like by the end of the weekend you go, could I live here? And I really believe that that's something that, like, it impacts our community when all these people are coming here for youth sports. They go, would I want to live in the triad? And
Mm.
that is powerful for our chambers, for our visitors bureau, for our growing business, all of those different things. So ultimately, through those like two main avenues, I'm very thankful that we're having a tremendous impact on the community. And I'm looking forward to continuing to do that, but just doing it much better.
I love that. I've been taking some notes here. Your mission statement is so powerful. And I love that you're looking at, all the sort of concentric rings of influence that you're creating. It's really beautiful. Well, let's shift gears just a little bit and talk about your role as the leader of this organization. So, what does a typical week look like for you? How much time are you spending on, fundraising? You're a nonprofit. How much are you spending on strategy or sales and marketing or just organizational management? What does your job makeup sort of look like?
I would say that it has changed a lot in 6 years. When we first came together as NC Fusion, bringing two totally separate nonprofits together, trying to find efficiencies,
Mm-hmm.
trying to what I would call build trust, build some
Mm-hmm.
structure. And people have different strategies of how they do that. My strategy is typically dig in. I would say that for the first year, it was me as the leader, and I had 22 direct reports. And
Wow.
I'm not recommending that to anyone who doesn't want their hair to turn gray, but I would
But
say
you're
that
really 28 years old?
that's exactly right. And then just did all
Yeah.
this. I found that that was the best way for me to really understand the people, understand their heart, also understand sort of their history. Everyone comes with something, and it allowed me time to sort of um, figure it out for myself instead of listening to people who said, "Oh, this person does that," or "This person's not great at that," or all these preconceived notions. I sort of just took it all on. And again, I'm not saying that's the best way, and obviously there's time constraints and all these different things, but that is how I started with the bringing this organization together. And I think it was hard on me, but it was
Mhm.
really good for the organization. And so I think it allowed me to make better decisions over the course of the last 6 years. Um, I've had great mentors in the nonprofit on my board that constantly said, "Scott, you can't do this forever. You're going to burn out if you keep doing
Yeah.
this. You need great people." And so there were just a few key people that I put in place to be on my leadership team. Excuse me. Um, and two were already part of the club, and I knew that they would they had my back, that they could tell where we were headed, and would go to bed thinking about it and wake up thinking about it when I thought I was the only one. And so um, about I guess it would have been in 2021, we did a 10-year strategic plan, how to
Hmm.
put a group together, to really figure out where are we really headed, and that was a wonderful process to go through. The main thing I would say that came out of that was the recognition that we needed two more great hires in specific areas of operations and on the business/finance side. And so I had Kristen as our chief administrative officer, who's been with the club a long time, former board member, former ultimate team manager, and she's just incredible, kind of the glue that holds us together. Sarah Bridges is our chief experience officer, and she truly oversees all the programming and the experience that our stakeholders have. Austin Homan was hired in this process to become our head of operations, and he oversees all of our facilities. We got him from the City of Greensboro Parks and Recreation program. And George Wright, we attracted down from Indianapolis. I'd met him at some national conferences over the years, and he was looking to move his family, and we had a great opportunity. And he's very lasered in on the business side, finance side of things. And really, just back to kind of what do I do on a daily basis? Well, that is my team, and my time is spent ensuring that they're supported well, ensuring that they have direction. They're self starters. I mean, they
Mm.
like I don't have to micromanage, which is wonderful for a person like myself who's more visionary. The whole model behind EOS is taking your vision and getting traction. And now after 2.5 years, we have traction. We see traction on a daily basis. In our world, traction is player and family with their coach. What is their experience, right? And
Hmm.
so if I'm sharing this big vision of 100,000 kids being impacted through youth sports over the next 10 years, or I share this mission with you that I just shared, is that what that family is experiencing? I mean, with 10,000 kids in the club, is that family experiencing that? Because if they're not, then truly, who cares about the mission? Who cares about this economic impact? Who cares about these facilities? It is that relationship that matters. And to be able to have that consistently across the triad with all our programs, first of all, is really hard. But I
Yeah.
will say that we are getting better and better and better and better at doing that. And we'll continue to try and get better at that. So what do? I really spend my time thinking way forward as the visionary,
Yep.
um, working with my leadership team to identify opportunities to help them solve issues, which we probably solve anywhere from 10 to 20 major issues in a leadership team meeting every single week, in addition to all the issues that are solved on a daily basis, right? And really just planning for the future, building relationships in the community. You mentioned fundraising, a little
Yep.
bit of that.
Yep.
A little bit, probably not as well as we probably should. But that I really get to do the things that I love doing and I'm probably best at, which that is not normal, and I do not take that for granted. I don't. So I'm very thankful. I will just say
You are definitely a rare breed right there.
that.
You might be that flying pig on the poster behind you, right?
That's right. That's right.
Um, that is, you're in a lucky position, but I'm sure there are still things that you worry about. It sounds like you have a very high functioning leadership team.
Mm-hmm.
You've been very intentional about putting all of that together. It sounds like you've figured out how to work together, how to really solve some of your problems together. But what are some of the challenges that still exist for you today, and where's your growth edge?
So I think our biggest challenge is what I said earlier in terms of scaling,
Mm-hmm.
because again, no matter how great your leadership team is, how great your facilities are, how great your mission is, if you don't have really great coaches that care about children and their families, and hopefully the game as well, you can't continue to grow. And so, continually not just attracting those people, but also developing people as well. So I would say that the ability to scale in that respect is very hard. I mean, similar to schools, right? And teachers, it's a very similar environment in terms of trying to attract high quality teachers that have that impact on kids.
Makes
Very, very
sense.
similar. That will be one big challenge. The second challenge from on a macro level is, I think youth sports has, in general, gets a bad rap in the media. Now, probably everything gets a bad rap in the media, but I would say that if I ask someone, when you watch the news or read the news, what are the first things that you hear about youth sports? And I would dare say most people say, "Oh my gosh, crazy sports parents." Like, there's one. Two, it's so expensive to play. Three, it's so much travel. And I I'll be honest, like I think we're fighting against those,
Mm,
because I don't think that's true. Personally, I think when it comes to addressing those three things, the first one is with parents, you're always going to hear about the the loud minority, right?
yeah.
And so most of our families are super reasonable. They really want what's best for their kids. They do need some equipping. They need to understand. They need some constant equipping to know, what are we really trying to do here? Are we trying to build the next Messi? Or are we trying to build young human beings that become great leaders in our community through the sport, as an example? And when you frame that out, I think that people in general go, "Oh yeah, you're right. I just need a little reality check." So I don't really. Again, it's what people say, but it's not what I see happening on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to, so expensive, well, I think that, anything that is going to be done really well is certainly going to cost resources. And
Mm-hmm.
people will say, in the world of soccer, at least, people argue that America will never catch up because we have a pay to play model versus other countries in the world. My argument is, somebody pays. Somebody pays. In other countries, it may be the professional teams invest in their youth
Mm-hmm.
because they have so much money at the top from the support of the community buying tickets, buying jerseys, all those things they can invest. And then their investment in those players, if it pays off, they can sell players to make money to refund it all over again. It doesn't work that way in America.
Yeah.
The second one is, you can go to a country like Iceland. Iceland believed in you, specifically youth soccer, but they had a plan as a country to elevate the level of soccer. So the country, the government invested in the infrastructure of youth soccer, facilities, coaches, etc. Well, the people still paid for that through taxes,
Right.
right? We just have a different model. It's not somebody pays. What I would just say is that my mission is always around that is make sure that everyone has access to it. So
Hmm.
if there's so we have a foundation called Beyond Sports. We're in 30 Title I schools right now, providing athletics for those schools, recess
Awesome.
time, after school. And if those players would like to try certain sports, and it doesn't have to be soccer, we help them find a way to participate in those sports in different clubs. So if we provide access to that pay to play model, then I think we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. So again, that's like a macro thing, what we're
Yeah.
fighting against, that's
Yeah.
it's a norm. But those are probably the day-to-day thing versus the big picture thing.
So as you think about you're a self-described visionary, and I can totally see that about you. So what do the next 3 to 5 years look like?
Well, we have every single year we have an annual retreat, and
Yep.
we look at first we reevaluate our 10-year goal or a 10-year vision, which has been 100. We would like to impact 100,000 athletes over the next 10 years. We're in the first two, we're already at about 30 some thousand. So we're probably at this year's annual going to have to adjust that, be a little more optimistic, throw it out there a little further. After we do our 10-year, we dial it back to 3 years, and we say, where do we want to be in 3 years? Then we do 1 year, and then we start every 90 days. We look at where we're at the
Absolutely. Yep.
next 90
Yep.
days. So, in terms of our 3-year picture, we want to have sports programming in 6 counties in the triad, which I believe, we're in 5 right now, sort of just about to go into our 6th in Alamance County. So that's one. Another is a really key thing is we want to increase participation of females in sport and in our programs by 10%. We've seen participation of females in sport really decline significantly, especially when they get to those 11, 12-year-old timeframes around middle school. We start to see a
Huh.
lot of dropout. And there's a number of other factors, but we have initiatives that are really focused on would we get there? How will we increase participation in women's sport by 10%? And I can share those with you if you want. But we also we want to make sure that we have a program that is from a financial assistance perspective. We want to make sure that we have a fully funded financial assistance program. We award over $300,000 a year in financial aid for our programs, and then we invest heavily into our foundation as well. So we'd love to be more intentional around how do we find donors and those that really believe in our mission, that want to support what we're doing and do that perhaps into perpetuity. A lot of organizations, a lot of nonprofits are run that way. And we really have focused more on our fees to play and our ancillary revenue streams, sponsorships, events, etc. So there's a huge opportunity there now, especially being so mission driven. I think people can really relate to the impact that sport has on people's lives. So that's a new focus here over the next couple of years. So I
Nice.
wouldn't. We're not really so much like, hey, like we're gonna be there, but we know we have a plan for how all the things we want to say that was an indicator of success. So those are a
Yes.
couple blips of what we're looking at.
Nice. So we've just spent a little time looking forward. So I want to do the opposite, which is to look backward. So as you think about your time leading the organization, what's been some of the big roadblocks or hurdles that you've had to overcome, and what were the lessons that you learned by going through that?
Yeah, I would say, I've done plenty of these Myers-Briggs and
Yep,
DISC
yep.
and,
Oh,
now
what's your disc
statistics.
profile? We use that a lot
Well,
too.
I'm a high I, which will really help explain the fact that that my biggest weakness and what I continue to struggle with is I'm a recovering people pleaser.
Yes.
I'm super relational, and everyone's biggest strength is probably equally their biggest weakness. And because I'm super relational, I really struggle to get no's. I struggle to be resilient when people don't like me or don't like what I'm doing, or don't like me about on things that they don't know anything about and who I really am. And so those things really, for a long time, kept me up at night. And I'm not saying that I'm any better initially at handling adversity or, those type of things, but I get over them much quicker now. I would say that the length of time I just have to put things in perspective and realize I will not make everyone happy. And that's not my job. My job is to try to do the best we can for the people that we're serving. And so some people just might not see that. And especially when you're working with children and
Oh my
people's
gosh,
kids,
yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
while you're trying to make the best decision, that may not feel like the best decision for someone's child, right? And so a good friend of mine, yesterday actually, we were texting back and forth, and we were talking about strengths and weaknesses, and he said, if you want to, if you want everyone to like you, just go into selling, be an ice cream salesman. So I'm not going to do that, but so
that is a really important lesson, which is, sometimes if you're doing your job right, you are going to be pissing people off.
yes,
Right.
yeah,
I used to
yeah,
be an investigative journalist, and, that was sort of a weird metric for
yeah,
success, but you always knew you were onto something when people started to get angry at you.
yes,
It's not really a metric that's very extendable into a lot of other careers other than investigative journalism,
true,
uh,
that's true.
but learning how to be resilient, right? And under having that self-awareness and having that mindset about I'm not here to make everybody happy all the time is a really good lesson for you to have shared with our viewers today. So let's shift up the energy level here a minute. I'm going to ask a few rapid fire questions.
Sure.
Just some quick ones. Just give me top of the head answers right out. Okay, here we go. Scott, what is the key to success for you?
I think the key to success for me is surrounding myself with people that I know will stick up for me even when I'm not there.
Nice. What is the best piece of advice you have for other business leaders?
Probably what I just said to myself. Really, I would just say that don't take it too personally when people get upset about something you've done when you are truly going after your mission.
Nice. So if you think about books that have changed your world or podcasts or resources, like what are some things love to recommend to other people to really help them expand on their growth edge?
Best podcast in the world is the Craig Groeschel Leadership Podcast by far.
The Craig Groeschel Leadership Podcast.
Craig Groeschel Leadership Podcast is the best in the world. I can't wait for each one to come out. I would say John, anything with John Maxwell is pure gold.
Yep.
So from a book perspective, my staff thinks this is hilarious, but I actually go to McKay's bookstore, and I go find the same exact books over and over and over and over again, for 75 cents that I can just give to my staff as much as possible. So we'll be reading this summer, all our full-time staff will be reading 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Fantastic.
And it's just nothing better. Next year, I've already got lined up. We'll read Good to Great.
Yep.
I think anything with John Maxwell, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I just got done reading for like the third time, 5 Levels of Leadership. And every time I read it, I go, oh, that was me. Oh, that's still me. Dang it, I didn't move on. So I would just say any of those. I mean, you cannot go wrong just reading them again and again. And so those would be my people.
I love your sense of curiosity and the fact that you're revisiting things to see how and if you're evolving,
Mm,
right? Because
yeah,
it's not about staying in the same place, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, so if you had magic pixie dust and you could sprinkle it on any one area of your business and poof, everything would be like perfect. All your pain would disappear. Like, where would you sprinkle your magic pixie dust?
Right onto the donor pool. I mean, if we had the ability to have someone that had really believes in our mission, that would help fund so many of the initiatives and things that we would like to accomplish. Money doesn't solve all problems, but it certainly makes some things easier. And yesterday I put my name in a pot to win $1 million at something, and it made you put, what would you do if you won the million? And I said start the endowment for NC Fusion, because
Nice.
I think it is really it does bring a level of peace when you know you're in a really good place financially, to make sure that you're really focused on the mission. It like allows this freedom to be able to do that, and taking that burden off of you. I think I think some of that burden is good because it keeps you on your toes, and you're always thinking, you're being competitive, you're whatever it is. But at the same time, that release to be able to be mission driven is really something special. So that would I mean, I'm sure everybody asks for that in some way, shape, or form, but
Wait,
it truly matters.
it's also a really important difference between a nonprofit and a for-profit. And
Sure.
I have run both. And the financial picture is entirely different for nonprofits in some ways, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you have monthly recurring revenue, or you're not, necessarily looking at sales projections. It's harder in a lot
Mm-hmm.
of cases to understand, what are the sources of our funding? What can we count on? What can we project? And it takes a special kind of resilience, I think, to do that as a nonprofit leader. All
Sure.
right. So my next to last question: what is most inspiring to you today?
You know, I think the most inspiring things to me have to do with seeing the impact of our work. Not necessarily, again, in our world, some might just think that, oh, what would be a measure of success? Oh, be a kid getting to play professional soccer. And we have some of those. We've got players that are playing all over the world right now that have come through our programs, which is neat.
Very cool.
But but the thing of really success, I'll give you two right off the bat. One is I run a podcast called, we call it the For Life podcast. It's part of our NC Fusion podcast, and I bring alumni back on the podcast that have played in our program, gone off and done something, and they are sharing how their youth soccer experience impacted their life now. And seeing these players that I coached 20 years ago or 15 years ago that are now maybe their coaches impacting kids, maybe their teachers. One just wrote put together a full length documentary that showed at the River Run Festival. I mean,
Nice.
those are like, and they talk about these experiences in youth sports that were not all great, just to be clear. They were not all great. Those moments that shape them into who they are today, that's inspiring. That makes you go, when you've been in it long enough, you start to go, oh, that's why we're doing what we're doing. So that's one. The second one is, I now have kids that are participating in sport. And this weekend, we went to an event where we didn't know that my son, he's 10 years old, we didn't know that his fusion coach was playing in the tournament. And his fusion coach was walking out, and they made eye contact. And it was the most like loving, magical, like, Coach Charlie. And it was so heartwarming to know the relationship, the bond that's formed coach child in sport, that as a parent just it just warms you, and you just, I think that is inspiring to, as a dad, not even just as, a leader of NC Fusion. So those are my two probably right now that I would say are inspiring me.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Well, Scott, that's all we've got today. Thank you so much. This has been some beautiful conversation about mission driven and being very intentional about strategy and execution, and your lessons on building a team of strong self-starters is just really, really good stuff. So listen, you guys out there, share this with your friends. This is the good stuff. Don't be keeping this to yourself. Get this out there. Scott, thank you so much. We look forward to hoping you have a great season and hoping you get to that 100,000 athlete goal in
Awesome.
10 years.
Thank
Awesome.
you, Karen. I
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
All
Yeah.
right.